Welcome to the Nick, Dick, and Paul Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nick Bilton, a former journalist turned screenwriter turned documentary filmmaker turned author. Did that too?
This is too long.
It's too long. I'll keep going. I have a dog named Maple.
I'm Dick Costolo, former. This is going to be the day of formers.
Okay,
I'm Dick Costolo, former Twitter CEO, former Secret Service agent, former author. Also, no, I never wrote anything. I've never written anything in my life. Now venture capital investor.
Paul Kedrosky. I actually former ski instructor.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's
Is that
a good
real?
one.
Yeah, I was a ski instructor multiple times.
And then?
That's it.
Oh. I actually have a question for you, Paul.
Yeah.
I know this is not part of what, maybe it is part of what we're talking about.
Cross country and downhill, by the way.
I read that you had an opportunity to invest in Google and you thought it was a bad idea. Is that right, or something like that?
No, well, yeah, sort of.
Really early, right?
PageRank. It was still PageRank.
Wow.
Yeah, or Backrub. Sorry. It was called Backrub. And
Wow.
it was just Larry and Sergey. And there was a weird little piece I read somewhere in like Electronic Engineering Times.
Because we all read that back then.
We did. And I emailed the guys, Larry and Sergey, about it. And I said, this is kind of interesting. And because they were talking about the PageRank algorithm and what have you. And I said, if you guys are thinking of doing anything, I'd be interested. And then they got the seed round from, I forgot who it was.
John Doerr or Mike Moritz.
It was like I don't even know. It was like $6 million at the seed valuation, and I said it was too expensive.
Did you really?
Good, nice
what would
work.
Can you do the math of like what
No.
like $100,000 would have turned to?
Plenty.
A lot, but not enough. I would have needed twice as much.
Yeah, that's on a previous episode, folks.
Sorry. But yeah, no, I did. I had the opportunity. Well, I did with Uber. I had with a bunch of stuff, but I didn't do any of those because Uber was stupid.
That'll never work.
It'll never. None of these things they're terrible ideas.
No, I emailed it. It was funny. It was Backrub. People don't realize that was the name of the company.
Yeah, I know the
It was
lore.
Backrub because they got kicked out of Stanford because they were using up the campus network, too much capacity on the campus network. So they moved into, I've forgotten whose garage.
Susan Wojcicki's
garage. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. And so they moved in there.
I broke the story at the New York Times on Evan Spiegel and Snapchat. He was in his dorm room, and I called him and I said, I'm writing a story for the Times or whatever. And he was like, can I call you back? I have a test in an hour. And he called me back, and I wrote the piece. And I thought he was very smart, and it was really cool. And I was good friends with Tony Conrad at the time, the investor. And I emailed Tony and I said, you should look at this company. I think it's going to be big. You should invest in them. And he never responded. And I was like, whatever. Years later, he was about to go on stage to do a talk. And I emailed him something, and I guess it looked from my email, and because the iPhone email search is horrific, it pulled up that email, and he looked, and he was like, "Oh my God!" And then he said he went out on stage, and the guy was like, "What's the biggest miss you have?"
Funny you should ask.
Funny you should ask.
I do that a lot, by the way. Whenever I see something and it rings a vague bell, I like close my eyes and I start searching in Gmail to see whether or not did someone tell me about this, because it feels like something I should know about it, because I'm terrified.
And there it is.
It's happened more than once.
It happened with me with Bitcoin, early 2011 I got an
email. No
email.
wonder this is your obsession with Bitcoin.
Well, I got an email, and they were like, it was funnily enough, it was my book publisher, the science guy, and he was like, you have any Bitcoin? It's like trading at like 50 cents. I think maybe this thing will go to $1.
Sorry?
2011.
Oh,
yeah.
And I never responded to him.
Do you have any Bitcoin? What kind of nonsense is this?
What is this ridiculousness?
That's funny.
Speaking of, we're going to be talking about software brain today. What is software brain?
I think we should start somewhere else, though.
Okay, great. Let's start somewhere else.
Start with the Musk. To start with the OpenAI trial.
I think to kind of understand software brain, you kind of have to start with understanding the people and the mentality of the people in AI in particular. And a great instructive current example is this ongoing Bananas trial.
Bananas is the right word for that. Yes, which
is the Musk claim that he was defrauded out of being the legitimate owner of OpenAI, and that in particular, the company did this transition from being a not-for-profit to a for-profit structure, and that this was a kind of, I think this is Musk's word, not mine, but I think it was something like, I'm basically doing this to prevent all of America from being looted. Because if you can do this, if you can transition a not-for-profit company to a for-profit one after it's taken all this risk capital, why wouldn't everyone do this? Because again, you don't have to pay taxes, and it's a very cheap structure to run. So this is, I am doing this as a service to America. Now, obviously, the backstory is what's much more interesting to help you understand software brain, because what's been coming out, and this most recently was just the beginning days of the trial, but the backstory about why Elon feels the way he feels is incredibly interesting, because it goes to this notion of what it is to think of the world in software terms. And specifically, Elon loves and tells this story, and Karen Howe, whose book Empires of AI is really good on this stuff. Elon tells the story about how he was at dinner or something.
Oh, yeah,
yes,
dinner
with
Larry Page. They were like besties.
They were besties at the time, and they were talking about AI, and Elon was going through his fear and dread moment with respect to AI and existential risk, and it may kill us all. And Larry, who has a kind of offbeat sense of humor sometimes, maybe he was kidding, maybe he wasn't.
I don't think he was kidding.
Okay, well, Elon said, this stuff could kill us all, and Larry essentially accused him of being speciesist.
No, Larry said, well, yeah, of course, these robots are going to become sentient and more intelligent than us, and if they get rid of us, that's just evolution.
That's the way it goes.
And Elon was apparently shocked.
Right, but he specifically, this idea that he was
called
being
him
accused,
speciesist.
Yeah,
that he accused him of
speciesist.
being a speciesist was really was sort of the crux. And he said in the early days, and
do we know how to pronounce that, by the way? Is it speciesist?
I'm going to go with speciesist, but I don't actually know.
Speciesist. You have to do it with a lisp.
All right. No, you don't have to do. What are you doing? Why do you have to constantly be offending people on our show?
That's right.
I had a lisp when I was a kid.
Constantly
I can
offending
say it.
people.
I'm allowed to say it. I had a lisp.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so he said this, and so Elon cited it both in the documentation leading up to the trial and then in the opening testimony in the trial, and said that this was the reason why I had to do this, to protect the world from this malign
just so
force
people,
of Larry
listeners
Page.
understand this. This was he then went, correct me if I'm wrong here, he then went to Sam Altman and said, we have to team up to save ourselves from being destroyed by robots. That is what the beginning of OpenAI.
Specifically, we have to create an open source version of what Larry is doing inside Google and owning it, because we can't let them win, and then the robots destroy us all.
Now, we all become like search algorithms. But just to be clear, by the way, it wasn't that he approached Sam because Sam is the all-knowing, all-seeing font of all things AI or anything like that. It wasn't
was not. He had nothing to do with it at the time.
Right? This was just happenstance that there was
they were just all hanging out.
They were all hanging out to people. There was Brockman, there was Ilya Sutskever, and others who were all kind of in this milieu.
How do you pronounce Sutskever? No, I'm not going to do this whole show, I promise.
Speciesist.
Speciesist.
And so they were all in the milieu, and there was this kind of general sense that, we need to make the world safe from Larry Page and Google and everything else or whatever, and that this may be the approach to take. And so that it was more organic, and I think that's a really important point, that Musk, I think, quite rightly characterizes himself as the prime mover at that point, who was driving it for his own reasons, which had to do with this fear of what was happening at Google.
I just love the fact that, the plot twist in all this is that Larry Page is out to kill us all, and we have to protect ourselves from. Meanwhile, Larry Page is probably in his new fabulous mansion in Miami, going, "Wait a minute." Me?
I'm
How did I end up in a trial?
That's right. Am I going to get called to testify?
Is he going to get called? He's not going to get called.
No.
It's not actually. This is just a backstory claim.
Yeah.
So, but that's this all began though because of his existential dread about what was going to happen, because Larry said he was a speciesist, and then in turn began pushing the whole thing forward. And so Musk's claim is, and he has a quote, I don't remember, it's something really particularly Elon-y, which is that I only contributed the idea, the name.
I contributed the idea, the name, all the first initial money, all the talent and resources, taught them everything I knew, comma, and nothing else.
Right.
I think he literally said that on the stand.
He said it on the stand. As making friends everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
And by the way, P.S., this is a jury trial.
Yeah.
Goal number one, ingratiate yourself to the jury is, hey, man, I'm just out to like help America.
Help America. I may be a controversial figure, but you know what? I misunderstood.
I think we should talk through this whole thing. The thing that I cannot stop thinking about.
We are talking through this whole thing.
But
it's
we'll get
literally
to all the
what we're doing. Specifically right now. You know what? We should talk about this on the podcast.
Right.
I was paying attention. Just let me finish my sentence.
This was so meta, I lost track of what I was metaing.
Right. Is if you're a juror, right?
If you're a juror. Oh, you're...
What?
Do it again. If you're a juror.
If you're a juror.
Yeah.
It's a two-syllable word, just so you know.
It's the old 30 Rock.
If you're on the jury, it is the old 30 Rock
30 Rock rural juror.
Yeah. So if you're on the jury and you see these two people that are both not the most likable human beings, like who you picking here? Like it's like you were on
it's a fair question.
It's like a murder, fuck, kill, but you just
FMK. No, but it's your goal is I have to be more likable,
correct,
than that person,
and that's really hard for both of them.
I think it's harder for one of them,
Elon.
And he showed it in the first day of testimony, where he made. From reports, almost no attempt to be even remote.
Yeah, but okay, so it's harder for Elon, but the emails that are going to come out and the duplicitousness from Sam is going to be pretty hard to dispel.
There's an old, I'm going to get the name wrong. There was a Kennedy nephew or a second cousin or something. Do you remember this on Cape Cod that was on trial for murdering that woman in the night and it had with the golf club, et cetera.
The Chappaquiddick incident?
Yeah. No, not Chappaquiddick. This is a
different murder.
This is like in the 90s.
different
Kennedy murder.
All right, so there's a Kennedy murder.
The prosecutor shows the defendant on the witness stand the 7-iron. That's apparently the murder weapon. And the guy just breaks down and starts crying.
Oh.
And he goes back to, when he's off the stand, he goes back and his lawyer's whispering something in his ear. And the person next to me, I remember watching this in like a restaurant or something. And the person next to me goes, "What do you think the lawyer's saying to him?" And I said, "I think he's saying next time, let's go with righteous indignation." Your job in front of the jury is, do they believe me?
Yeah.
And if they like me, they believe me.
Yeah.
They want to believe me if they like me more.
Yeah.
So answering questions in a sort of monotone, voice as if you're disinterested, and then also saying, I did this and this and this and this and this and nothing else.
Yeah.
Like,
but
your job is not to annoy the jurors.
Yeah, but the jurors probably look at Elon and think like, I like him because he's Elon Musk and he's worth billions and trillions.
They're going to say they do or they don't?
I think they will.
No, the judge already said at the beginning, warned that they were having trouble picking a jury pool because of
like well, there you go.
The dislike for...
Well, that answers that question.
What I wanted to say, though, about your specific point is I don't think it will matter. I mean, in most cases, not just this case specifically, it ultimately won't matter the details of either case. What will come down to is which of these two people does the jury like more? I mean, whether that's always the case, right? I mean, it's always the case. But so your job is to get up there and ingratiate yourself to those people over there.
Yeah,
and show that I may be a billionaire, but I'm your billionaire. I'm working. I'm doing this to save you from the threat
of Larry Page.
Of Larry Page and AI.
I do wonder though if, just to play devil's advocate here, if there is a version of it where people are afraid of AI. They're definitely, and that's partially there's the whole conversation about the AI companies are spreading these rumors, if you will, that we're all going to die soon and they need more funding, and that's part of the whole fundraising and so on and so forth.
Wait, what? That's part of their fundraise?
A lot of people.
I'm getting the wrong documents.
No, a lot of people.
Look,
with Anthropic specifically, there's been a ton of articles on it. There's a ton of discussions about the fact that, and Elon has done it too, and OpenAI, that, oh my God, AI is going to kill us all. We're all going to die soon. We have to build up our our companies to make sure we avoid that from happening. That's a big part of what's going on.
No, I don't disagree with that. And I think to Elon's credit, he actually not only says it but believed it. I believe that. I do believe that. Yeah. I don't believe that Dario or Sam or those guys necessarily believe it. I think not in the same way. I think Elon legitimately
he read a lot of sci-fi.
Yeah. He read a lot of sci-fi and believed it early on.
Yeah.
And so his backstory about the origins of OpenAI for me is actually credible. Like it did come from this source of this fear about what was going to happen with this technology, and so that is part of his upset in this court case was that. But I think that's going
to play a role. It's yes, who do I like more? But there is going to be the jury is going to say, "Oh fuck, are we going to die? Like if we let Sam win this, like is it good? Because that's going to be part of the legal argument, right?"
Yeah, but I think it's much more likely, do I believe this kind of vaguely satanic billionaire, or do I like the sort of the Hollywood cast young entrepreneur who's just trying to, he's just moving fast and breaking things. I've been told that's good. And so I think that's going to be the struggle all the way through this, is that, okay, fine, he may have some of the facts on his side, but this whole business of starting companies is very messy and lots of things change and people move in and people move out. And I think the thing that's going to be really hard for him is this idea that he does seem a little like sour grapes, where it's like
Elon does.
Yeah, because it was successful. Suddenly he started caring when it became successful. He started caring a lot more when it became very successful, and not before that. He kind of checked out, created Grok and XAI and whatever.
I did hear from someone that there was
your job is to get up there, smile at the jury, and say, I'm really, at the end of the day, just like you.
I'm just a regular guy. Put on $1 billion one leg at a time.
Well, multiple billions when it comes to these guys.
Right.
Or a trillion. Elon will be a trillionaire this year.
Yeah.
He's at what, 860, 870 now?
I've lost track. But yeah, SpaceX goes out and he's a trillionaire.
Yeah, he'll be a trillionaire.
Yeah. But I think but to Dick's point though, that's going to be the struggle. That's what he should be doing, regardless of what you think the facts of the case are and everything else. But to go full financial wonk for a second, it is worth pointing out that like the argument that you shouldn't be able to do what OpenAI did isn't a bad argument.
No, I totally agree with that.
Meaning not just take it away from Elon. I don't give a shit. That's what happened. But the idea that you start off in a not-for-profit structure, take in a boatload of cash under this capped return structure, which is this structure where you say, here's the maximum you can earn in terms of your investment, as all kind of end runs around it being a not-for-profit structure, and then you flip to a for-profit structure, I think Elon's not
dangerous.
Wrong. Right. It's it lays a path that lots of people can follow and say, well, it worked for them. Why can't I do that?
Yeah.
Right. And that's not a very good thing.
What are the potential outcomes for what happens here? Does it hand it over to Elon and he becomes the CEO? Is it that they cannot become the for-profit and go public? Like, what are all the versions of what happens in this scenario?
There's lots of versions, and the only one that's going to happen is he loses.
That's it.
I think. I don't think he has a. Well, juries can do any kind of crazy thing, but I don't see how he wins this.
Do you have any thoughts on this? No.
My thoughts are that I agree with what it doesn't. I agree. I just don't see any other outcome other than.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're right, but what are you going to do? It'll be something like that.
Yeah, this is the
or at best. If you want to say at best in the Elon case, they rule sort of for Elon. It's something that doesn't derail what's already in process with OpenAI.
Yeah, and I mean, you get that, and I think that's part of why his initial testimony is so half-hearted. This is for him.
He knows what's going on.
Right, this is shit posting in legal.
Well, it's an attempt to slow down the IPO, but it's not going to do anything.
No, it'll have no impact. This will be a relatively rapid trial, and it'll get to this conclusion that there's really not much for the courts to do here. Yeah. I mean, he's got two strong arguments. One is, the organization this mutation from a not-for-profit to a for-profit structure was really dubious. And the second argument that he was one of the founders and has a bigger role here than was being laid out is true, but it's also true with Elon's role with Tesla. I mean, go back in time. I mean, Elon, his initial founding role with Tesla is that he wasn't really a founding role, right? I mean, it was a structure that already existed, and he came in relatively
Well, it's
early.
the same with every story in the history of the successful company, for the most part, in the history of Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, there's lots of people involved, and people who've turned out to be foundation came in at different times and all this sort of stuff. So, I buy both of those arguments. I think they're both really strong arguments, and I don't think Sam has done himself any favors in this context. But I also think, unfortunately, it's not going to make any difference. But that doesn't mean that, and this sort of leads to the software brain stuff and other things, that it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be concerned about some of the arguments that are being made about this kind of race towards widespread adoption of AI, and or that Elon's initial concerns that it was going to turn us all into Larry's paperclips, not just paperclips.
There's also there's the smoking gun, which is the Siobhan Zillis email where she had said he supported it as a for-profit so long as he was in control.
Yeah.
And it's like when you see that email, it's game over because his argument makes no sense.
Well, and that was, if you read Empires of AI, Karen Howe's book, she makes that same point really compellingly from the documents, that was really the crux of the issue was he wanted full control because he was the major capital contributor, which isn't a wrong instinct. And Ilya and Sam and Greg kind of formed a coalition on the other side and said, no, given the choice between Sam as CEO and Elon as CEO, we kind of rather sort of maybe have Sam as CEO. And Elon basically said, well, then F you. I don't want to be part of this. Good luck finding the money, because he had initially made some large commitments. Good luck finding money that I'm now not going to give to you. And that's in turn turned into the relationship with Microsoft and other sources of capital. And so, they moved on because he didn't get what he wanted, and he took his toys and went home.
Dick, you've talked a little bit about Microsoft and their strategy in the OpenAI, in the relationship. Do you think it was a good idea for them, or
it's certainly changed. Seems to change every couple months.
Yeah.
And it's one of these if it were a Facebook relationship, it would be it's complicated. Seriously, it's not
No,
married,
I don't truly understand.
It's complicated. And they keep on, and it seems to be back off. It's one of these on again, off again marriages that seems to be off again. In the last week or so, Satya seems to have trying to distance Microsoft
because of all the negative press.
Who knows what's really going on behind the scenes? But it could be for any number of hey, you guys keep on saying X and then doing Y, and I'm not going to keep doing this. So I think it probably is more split up longer term than here we are together again.
But I saw a report last week.
One of the more level-headed CEOs. So I think he might just be getting to the point where he's like, okay, I'm not going to keep doing this, and we don't need to keep doing this.
There's a report that some people are talking about if Sam is the right CEO to take the company public, and does Satya get to be involved in that discussion?
I doubt it.
I doubt. So do you think that Sam is going to take it public and that's just it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be really surprised.
Yeah.
Because it's at this stage, it's kind of like a movie launch, right? The stars are cast.
Yeah.
You're not going to recast the guys at this point.
We've already shot most of the film. We're in editing.
Right.
It's due out the big blockbuster opening.
The teasers are out and everything else. And so I think that's kind of set in stone, and for better or for worse. And so, any people's concerns about him,
it doesn't matter.
Nothing matter.
I would say that the person and I know this person personally and think they're a wonderful human being, but the person with the most difficult job right now is Sarah Fryer, the CFO of OpenAI, because you've got this trial, you've got the commitments that the CEO is out there making and deal doing with the Oracles and the Microsofts and the AWSs and Stargate. And, we've talked about a bunch of this stuff before that are, pile up and add up to something like $1.6 trillion, I think, give or take a few $1 billion, which is, quite a bit less than the current revenue trend line. and it changes from time to time. And you can kind of do that if you're the CEO and you're out there freewheeling it. But if you're the CFO and you're on the hook for what's in the S1, and you're probably in the midst of writing the S1 when most of it's written and you've written your risk sections and on and on and on, you got to be very careful about how you answer questions about, well, your CEO just said X, Y, Z.
How do you navigate that? You took a company public. How do you deal with that?
It's a challenge. She's got to be super careful about what she says, but she also can't get up there and go, well, he's crazy and he's wanted by the he's crazy and he's wanted by the campus police, and
No, I see
he ate too much polio vaccine this morning, and God only knows what he's going to say. She just can't do that, or he's going to say, hey, I didn't like what you said about me on the in front of the interview or whatever. So she's got that's an impossible job. Yeah, it's an impossible job.
But the other thing that's kind of interesting, and it ties to the S1 and the OpenAI IPO, and it goes back to the court case, is there's a bit of game theory going on here, which is specifically there's 3 major IPOs likely to come out this year that are like unprecedented in terms of their size, right?
Yeah.
So there's SpaceX, which is the
Elon 7.5 trillion.
No,
hundreds of trillion.
No, but there was a joke about how that's what he wanted it to be.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
I didn't even see that one. So there's SpaceX, which is kind of like this conglomerate of who knows what, but nevertheless is going to have a high valuation when it comes out. There's Anthropic, which is Claude.
These are all going to be
this year, $1 trillion
valuations.
So in all likelihood, the sum of all of them will be something in excess of $4 trillion. That's
insane.
On that order of things. And the other one's OpenAI, which is the one we've been talking about.
But you said there's 4.
3, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
$4 trillion, three major IPOs. But here's the thing.
Even with inflation, $4 trillion is still a lot of money.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So here's the thing. If you're playing this out, if I'm Elon, what would I like to have happen? Do I want to go out? I'm SpaceX. Do I want to go out before OpenAI or after OpenAI? Well, I want to go out before OpenAI. Well, why do I want to go out before OpenAI?
That's interesting.
I want to go out before OpenAI because institutional investors who are going to be, these are massive deals. This isn't going to be just some dude on E-Trade, right? Or Robinhood or whatever. These are the kinds of things that have to take huge amounts of sovereign wealth funds to purchase. Now, there's all kinds of like intricacies in terms of the size of the float and blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, there's going to be very large, require large investors. So there's only so much capacity for purchasing these kinds of things.
I want to suck as much oxygen
I want
out
to
of the room
suck as much oxygen out of the room as possible by going out as early as possible. And there's 2 ways I can go out early. 1, I can just go out early, or 2, I can hold everybody else up. I can slow down the other IPOs so I can go out earlier so that the institutional flow of capital is available to support the valuation I want. Now, there's other like weird intricacies like, well, where's that money coming from? Well, these large sovereign wealth funds don't have just cash sitting around. Yeah. Which is this misnomer that they've got a lot of money. No, the money's all spent. It's all invested, right? It's like banks. They're not just sitting on huge piles of cash. They're using it for something. So to fund the SpaceX IPO or whoever goes out first, they have to sell something else, right? So they got to sell a lot of something else if you're buying a big thing, right? Big things require lots of sales. So the thing to think through is, so what gets sold? Well, it has to be things that they say, well, that's kind of like SpaceX, but in lieu of holding SpaceX, or in lieu of holding that, I'll hold SpaceX. So it's going to be all these other tech companies are going to get the living crap sold out of them because these companies or these large funds have to generate cash to purchase SpaceX. And once they do that, they're going to be very loath to continue doing that, right? Because now I've sold down all these other positions.
But what happens with the part that I don't understand is what happens if, when you look at these S1s that are going to come out, right? They're not, the numbers are going to be so far off, right?
How do you mean?
What do you mean?
Well, the risk, the debt, when they're going to be profitable and so on and so forth.
Nobody cares.
I don't think you're up on. I was like, maybe you're not up on current events, man.
but
look at Tesla's stock price compared to the underlying financials.
Yes, Tesla. But can you have 4 Teslas? Like, can you? It's that size. Like, how long can that inevitably go on for?
Yeah, a long time. Yes.
Really?
So the issue, but the game is not that. The game isn't saying like, oh, in 10 years this will all go bad. The game is, how do I make sure I step out early enough such that the flows of capital support the valuation, so I can sell into it and get enough of my stock out there. And the way you do that is by being first out the door.
And then ones that come after, they're just not going to be as successful as an IPO?
They'll be harder to do. They'll be much harder to do as a result. So you can one way to think about what's going on here is I'm simply trying to like hold up traffic while I get my vehicle down the road first, because I want to make sure that the institutional flows that support this, that support my IPO, given these are, I was doing the math the other day, it's like these 3 IPOs together are more than the issuance during the entire .com period. These 3 IPOs alone are more than every IPO since World War II, inflation adjusted pre.com.
Wow.
It's like people have the scale of this in terms of the capital flows are just out of this world.
It really is a lot like Hollywood. One of the things that happens in Hollywood is you set a date, even if the movie's not written or anything, and it's like, and you set that date because because people will only go see 2 or 3 movies a year in the movie theater, and if no one can have that date once you do it, and if you go first and all those things. It's like you've got your actors and you've got your story but
imagine like there's only going to be 3 movies at all this year, right? Yeah. And all the tickets are going to go to those 3. This is what's going on, and so this is the thing that what's going on under the hood that I don't think people understand, that there's this incredible dynamic in terms of the cash flows. This is not just about the soap opera in the courtroom. There's also an element of how do I make sure that I position myself such that cash flows to my IPO, not to others, and that's part of the game here. And that's unprecedented. I mean, the idea that like 3 IPOs are more than the total of all IPOs pre.com since World War II. Do we not even have capital markets anymore? I mean, what does that even mean? That's the craziest. Yeah. Right?
The other interesting thing will be the enormous liquidity that will accrue to the early SpaceX and Elon and the other early SpaceX investors. Right. That's going to be more than, I mean, people talk about things like the Snowflake IPO or whatever is being generated. Like this is going to make those look like
tiny.
Right. Like,
And that
nothing.
liquidity is going to go across 3 IPOs.
Right. The first one, SpaceX, was going to generate, look at Founders Fund and a couple others who were in there early and in size, like DFJ Growth. The liquidity that accrues to them is like never seen anything like it before. Are they going to want to liquidate
immediately, or are they going to want to?
It doesn't really matter. They'll have liquid stock that they can do whatever they want with, but distribute it
to their LPs relatively,
whatever.
Right.
But it's crazy amounts. It's crazy amounts of money. And so one of the things you ask is like, well, what do those people then even do?
Mm-hmm.
Might as well like fold up your tent and go home. Like we're not going to do that again.
No, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
This isn't going to happen for me a second time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So this is what's really. Those flows, the changes in people's behavior. It's already shown. It's already forecast in next year's California budget. The income that they'll see from the IPO sales, which in turn, California is hugely levered to what happens in capital markets because of capital gains on stock issuance and subsequent IPOs. So it's already being tied into state budgets.
Fascinating.
Not surprisingly, California has already spent it.
Yes,
that's right.
On the high-speed rail line that will never be completed.
That's right. It's already done. But all of these like pieces are. The idea that it's already in the budget forecast for next year, the idea that, as Dick says, this incredible liquidity flow, like I wouldn't want to be, or maybe I would want to be an Aspen real estate agent. I don't know. I mean, you're just going to be overwhelmed with the flows coming in. And the idea that this trial, in a weird sort of way, you can think about it as an attempt to throw some sand in the gears of all of the other IPOs out there. And that's, we've never seen anything like it.
No, it is mind-boggling because all the Twitter IPO, the Facebook IPO, these were tiny in comparison. Just minuscule.
Right. And even though they're not obviously going to be selling all the shares, there's like this notion of float and how much of the shares are actually tradable. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Over time, all of that stock will come out. And then, of course, all that money has to find a new home and all of it will start flowing around the economy in all sorts of strange and perverse ways. And this is, we've never seen anything on this scale. Ever.
Can we transition back to this concept of software brain and how this is all relevant to this?
Well, I think that's the piece that's really interesting for me is watching the people. For me, like this was, what's his name, Patel?
Nilay Patel. Yes.
Yeah, who writes, he's like the editor.
Nilay Patel, he's a lawyer.
For The Verge.
Who writes for The Verge.
Is he like an editor there or something?
He's like the top editor. He was a reporter who, covered the tech beat for a long time and then kind of took over The Verge, and has made it really what it is today.
So the piece that I thought was interesting about that was you wrote a thing about software brain and this idea that the people don't want what the software industry is selling, which kind of goes to your point about how long this can last. And I thought it was really interesting that he argued software people have a tendency to look at the world as everything's an algorithm.
And everything's a database.
And everything's a database, right? And so everything's a database and an algorithm that can act on it. And they see the world through that lens. Like, so for example, my favorite example is that people start comparing large language models, AI models, on the basis of how well they do math. And it's like, wow, that's exciting, but who gives a fuck? Life is not a math problem. And yet they'll extrapolate from that and say, oh, look, they're improving and they're solving all of these math problems that have absolutely no bearing on what will happen in terms of what AMI models will do in the world. But that's because they have software brain. They think about the world in terms of algorithms and data and sort of extrapolate from that and say, well, this is what's going to happen because look what's happening in math, or look what's happening in code, or look what's happening in all these places. But it's a really...
Look at how well it can like move this information into and out of the database and manipulate it and put it back in.
But it's a really blinkered way of looking at the world.
I imagine a New Yorker cartoon of like a guy sitting in the office. And he's like, well, we got some bad news. You got software brain.
Got good news and bad news.
Good news and bad news. And but I think that's part of what pisses people off is these software engineers who are extrapolating from the way that it's impacting the way that they think about the world and using that to say, well, here's what's going to happen in law. Here's what's going to happen in finance. Here's what's going to happen in all these domains. And it's this kind of, it's tone deaf and it's a complete misunderstanding of what people think and want. You may think this will be really helpful for you because you hate understanding how Python works.
Right.
But it has no bearing on whether or not I find this stuff scary, useful, or anything else. And it's because of software brain. You think about the world in this very narrow, blinkered way.
Patel actually argues that software brain and lawyer brain are similar diseases, right?
That's right. That was a good one.
The lawyer brain just thinks of everything in terms of procedure and statutes and citations and not outcomes, right? I mean, it's one of the reasons you could argue it's one of the reasons the U.S. Congress is so ineffective right now is it's mostly lawyers who think about that. Well, it's not the right procedure to go through. The procedure we should use is X, Y, Z, and this is the process. That's how lawyers think about things. Again, procedures and statutes and so forth. But the world manages to outcomes, or when it's successful, you manage outcomes. And so lawyer brain and software brain are more about that's not how people think about what they're going to do today. They don't think about it in terms of, I've got to get the right numbers into and out of this database using this particular process.
But that's why this case is so interesting, because you're seeing software brain on full display.
But in front of people who don't, but in front of, this is my earlier point, tying it all back, in front of people who don't have software brain and are like, well, gas is $5 a gallon.
Right.
What does this guy talking about that has, and that's why what they should be trying to do is, hey man, again, I'm just like you trying to, help America by providing an open source AI platform.
Right.
Not arguing about the, bickering with each other about the minutia of the details.
Or the relative consequences of whether this AI will kill you before that one does.
Right.
Exactly.
Right? That's right.
I mean, but that's such a classic software brain way of thinking about it that I can just present these things and then...
Yeah, I'll explain to them that by doing it this way, my AI wasn't going to kill you as fast as his AI was.
I'm Elon, and I'm much more sympathetic because I actually am building a way for you to get to Mars before the AIs kill you. And it's like, wait a minute. You've missed the whole point here, that none of this is appealing to me. And that's the problem with a lot of these discussions.
I also think goes back to, there in the media, there's this disconnect between, wait a minute, not vast maybe, but the majority of U.S. like 18 to 30-year-olds sort of disapprove, if you will, of AI.
Yeah.
1,000%.
And yet more and more of them use it. Mm-hmm. And so there's this like, well, how can that be true? We're talking about exactly how it can be true. Like, well, I have to use it or I'll fall behind.
Yeah.
But I hate the fact that this is being done to me instead of, I actually think, and this is going to sound seemingly crazy, but it's one of the reasons I feel like smoking is coming back. Like cigarette smoking, which is really making
coming?
Yeah, totally. In
where?
New York, big cities, you see people like smoking cigarettes.
Real ones, not the fake ones.
Real ones.
Wow.
Really?
I think people are like, I gotta get out of this like vortex I've been pulled into and go back to the analog world.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
And,
I truly
cigarettes are a cool analog thing that is not using ChatGPT. I mean that sincerely. I know
No,
it sounds
I
like
1000%
a big
agree with
stretch,
you.
but I think that's part of the.
Yeah.
You ask yourself, like, well, how in the world can people go back to smoking when it's so obviously horrible and life shortening for you? But it's people are like, I'm sick of this nonsense.
I think that this is happening across a number of things. I think like I went to see the movie Michael and the Michael Jackson biopic, and the critics, it was sub 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a disaster. They didn't tell the real story. It is going to make $1 billion because it's just fun. I don't need a fucking woke explanation of why I shouldn't watch it or listen to Michael. Like, it was a fun movie.
Yeah.
And I think like people are sick of with tech. You know, you have this. There was a bill that was passed in Texas recently banning cell phones in schools, and the number of kids that the reported taking out books, it's like it jumped 61%. Like, I think that in the school libraries, I think that we are.
Mostly so they could hold the book up in front of their cell phone.
To hide cell phone.
Hey, it's me on Book Talk.
Yeah. When they return the books, there's a big hole cut out of the center of them, the size of an iPhone.
I used to have one of those.
What, to hide your phone?
No, you had a thing where I could hide stuff inside of a book. You glue all the pages together and you carve a section.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
It kept thumb drives in it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what was on the thumb drives, but it just felt fun.
Yeah, it felt like something really super spy.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that there is this pushback. I mean, we want to be outside. We want to be out in the real world. We don't want to have to interact with all these things all the time. And yet all the people in Silicon Valley are like, but this is the only way you can do it.
Right. And that's because they have this.
They have software brain.
They have software brain.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this has been another episode of the Nick, Dick, and Paul Show. We have podcast brain.
We do have podcast brain.
Yes.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.